I knew it. They all said I was mad, but I knew the fuck out of it. Our world is a masterpiece. No friggin' damned wonder it's so fun all the time. Kat yelled out, constantly getting more and more excited as she read. Meanwhile, Canine wandered around the room sniffing everything. Kat was finishing the entire first book faster than I'd managed to read the first paragraph, so I waited until she was done with the whole thing before I took it to keep reading what I'd started yesterday. By the time I finished the first few chapters, my brain was throbbing from all the new spell work I had had to learn just to keep reading further in. Before I could even finish one book, Kat had already made it to the fifth. I was more than a little embarrassed by how slow I was going in comparison, only comforted by the fact that it was like trying to learn to read a new language, the language of the entire universe. It was a little too much. After a while, I decided to take a break. So I asked K9, "Hey, have you found anything interesting while sniffing around?" "Surprisingly, yes. Come here, check this out." I walked over to him and found that he was hovering around a few ceremonial-looking objects. As soon as I got close, I could feel that these items held power. They were weapons. Weapons that had practically been soaked in magical energy. I was astounded that I'd missed them before now. When I got close enough to hear them, they were all practically humming with their own unique and powerful vibrational energy. But when I backed up even a little bit too much, I couldn't feel anything from them at all. One of them was a large shield with a small short sword. Another was a large bow with no arrows. There was also a locked grimoire and a key nearby. And the last was a tall spear. I picked up the bow first. When I tried to draw the string, I found it was so tight that my fingertips would have bled before they managed to move it. I was disappointed, as I preferred ranged combat, but I figured I could at least try to wield the spear with some efficacy. As I tried to lift it, I found the balance was all kinds of wrong. I couldn't even move it from its stand without getting so dizzy I almost fell over as soon as my hands were on it. It almost felt like the spear itself was intentionally messing with the gravity around me. I put it back on its stand before I fell. Then I moved to the shield and sword. I was pretty sure at this point that my weapon would be the grimoire, but I wanted to save it for last. I wasn't a fan of the idea of playing the tank. Taking hits to support other people behind me always seemed too masochistic. I was hesitant to even touch the shield at first, but as I got close, its quiet magical hum turned into a song of unparalleled beauty. The moment I touched the shield, it turned void black and disappeared. Then a small note appeared in my mind saying, "Shield and Sword of the Void added to inventory." Of course, there were no instructions about how to retrieve them from said inventory, so I could only stand there stunned and confused. "Huh, so that's what happens when you," Canine said as he picked up the bow. As soon as he held it in his hands, it transformed into a tennis ball launcher. He immediately pulled the trigger and began chasing the projectile around the room. The ruckus that he created caused Kat to stop reading her 10th book long enough to wander over to me and the small collection of weapons. She touched the grimoire first, recoiling from it as she did. The horrified look on her face made me a little glad I hadn't touched it too. She walked over to the spear, and as soon as she touched it, the inanimate metal spear began to practically dance around her. I honestly couldn't tell if she was even holding on to it. It moved too fast to keep track of with my eyes. It vanished out of existence and then back into her hands in the blink of an eye. It shrank and extended past its original dimensions, then once again disappeared. I was even more jealous than before. Not only could she read those books so much faster than me, she seemed to be a natural with the spear that I'd wanted. Without a word, she walked back to her desk and continued to read. As she did, Canine slipped under the large "Finders Keep" banner and then shouted, Girls, you gotta come see this. Cat was quicker and closer than I was, so I followed behind her. As we snuck under the banner, there was a small alcove and a large wood and a wood. There was a small alcove and a large wooden chest. It was obviously booby-trapped with an oddly obvious, old, visibly frayed rope attached to some kind of trigger mechanism hidden in the floor. What do you think's inside? K9 asked. No clue, but I don't have any idea how that trap is designed, and I'm not going to find out. I really don't want to mess with any kind of trap that's that obvious. It isn't even hidden, so it's got to be really deadly to be effective. Come on, I think we've been here long enough for today. If we don't get back soon, someone may notice we've been missing for a while, I said as the others nodded, and we slowly backed out of the alcove, being careful not to touch anything else. Back in the main room, Kat grabbed a few of the books, and then they both put a hand on my shoulders. I took out my controller, pushed the button as I pulled the trigger. In a heartbeat, we were once again in the empty church. We parted ways with quick hugs and a promise to meet up the next day so Kat could read more of the small library. She was already a gifted mage, but reading those books seemed to do something to her magic. It was practically surging stronger and stronger every time she finished a book. I had peeked at a few of the later ones, but they were either in code or some kind of math so advanced I didn't have a chance of understanding it.